I want you to stop scrolling for a second and visualize a very specific scenario. The date is August 2020. You are standing on a street corner in the Ashrafia district of Beirut, Lebanon. Until very recently, this neighborhood was called the Paris of the Middle East. It was wealthy, it was cultured, it was safe. But today, you are watching a transaction take place between two men that defies everything you learned in economics class. On one side, you have a senior account manager for a major bank. On paper, this guy has a net worth of nearly $1 million. He's wearing a tailored suit that probably cost $800, and he is weeping. He is holding out a Rolex Submariner, a luxury timepiece with a global market value of roughly $12,000. He is offering it to a man who runs a small, dusty corner bodega. Now, pay attention to the trade. The banker is not asking for cash. He isn't asking for stock options or Bitcoin. He is begging for 4 tins of powdered baby formula and a box of generic diapers. The bodega owner? He hesitates. To him, that Rolex isn't an asset. It's a liability. It screams target in a city where the streetlights have gone dark. You can't eat a chronograph. You can't feed a stainless steel bezel to a crying infant. In that specific, terrifying moment, the forensic value of the Rolex has collapsed to zero, while the value of dried milk powder has approached infinity. This isn't a hypothetical exercise I just made up to scare you. This is a documented economic event from the Lebanese liquidity crisis, where the lira lost 90% of its value in less than 18 months. And here is the data point that keeps me awake at night. We watched sophisticated investors with portfolios full of store-of-value assets, gold, luxury watches, real estate deeds, starve. Meanwhile, the grandmother down the street who knew how to pickle vegetables and the mechanic who could fix a diesel generator, they lived like kings. The conventional survivalist wisdom, the prepper dogma you see all over the internet, screams at you to stack gold and silver eagles. God's money, they call it. And look, I get it. I've analyzed the charts myself. I own precious metals. But when we perform a forensic autopsy on what actually happens during a total systemic failure, not the theoretical collapse discussed on podcasts, but the dirty, brutal reality of the historical record, gold ranks shockingly low on the hierarchy of needs. So, what ranks at the top? Caloric sovereignty, kinetic skills, the Cuban hedge. By the time we finish this deep dive, you are going to understand exactly why a $500 investment in fermentation jars, heritage seeds, and a solar charger is mathematically superior to $10,000 in gold bullion when the lights go out. Let me walk you through the autopsy. Because history is a crime scene, and the fingerprints are everywhere. Point 1. The hypervelocity of ruin. The first lesson we pull from the data is that currency collapse does not happen in a straight line. It happens exponentially. It is a phase transition, exactly like water turning to steam. 1 minute it's liquid, the next minute it's gone. Most people operate under what psychologists call normalcy bias. They believe they will have time to react. They think they'll get a warning letter. History says, you won't. Let's look at Weimar Germany, 1923. We treat this like ancient history, but the mechanics are terrifyingly modern. In January 1923, a loaf of bread cost 250 marks. By November of the same year, that same loaf cost 200 billion marks. We have diaries from that era describing how the shift happened in real time. At first, people just tried to spend their money faster. Then, shopkeepers started closing at noon just to update the price tags. Finally, the currency was literally used as kindling for stoves because its thermal value as fuel was higher than its exchange value for coal. This transition didn't take a decade. It took months. Fast forward to Argentina, December 2001, the infamous corralito. The government didn't send a push notification warning you to get your cash out. On a Saturday night, the Minister of Economy simply announced that all bank accounts were frozen. You could not withdraw your own money. The ATM network went dark instantly. In 48 hours, the Argentine middle class, people with degrees, vacation homes, and savings accounts, became the new poor. Riots erupted, not because people were suddenly political, but because they were hungry. Consider the Soviet Union, 1991. When the ruble collapsed, it wasn't a slow decline, it was a cliff. Dmitry Orlov, an eyewitness to the Soviet collapse, documented how university professors were suddenly driving illegal taxis and selling their library books to buy vodka. And they weren't buying vodka to drink it. They were using it as a liquid currency because nobody wanted the paper money. The pattern is identical across continents and centuries. It goes like this. Denial. The government claims inflation is transitory. Sound familiar? Velocity. The population realizes the money is bad and spends it immediately, which accelerates the inflation. The freeze. The banking sector halts withdrawals to prevent a run. The 0 point. Your digital wealth is trapped, and your paper wealth is trash. If you are holding your breath for a 72-hour warning from the Federal Reserve, you are betting against every historical precedent we have. When the curtain falls, it falls instantly. Point 2. The reversion to barter. Physics. So what happens when the abstraction of money fails? Does the economy stop? No, it simplifies. It reverts to the laws of thermodynamics. Only energy and matter with utility have value. Take Sri Lanka in 2022. The economy ran out of fuel reserves. The rupee was effectively monopoly money. Did commerce stop? No, it shifted to the petrol standard. Farmers who had rice couldn't get it to the city without gas. City dwellers had jewelry, but no food. A shadow market emerged where 5 liters of petrol traded for 20 kilos of rice. The exchange rate wasn't set by a central bank. It was set by the caloric needs of the participants. Let's look at the Soviet Gulag economy, which has been studied extensively by economists. In a closed system with no official currency, cigarettes became the standard unit of account. Why cigarettes? It wasn't just because of addiction. They were uniform, fungible. They were divisible. You can trade one cigarette, a pack, or a carton. They were consumable. The supply constantly shrank, preventing long-term inflation. In this environment, a gold coin is actually a problem. It represents too much value. Imagine you are in a collapsed supply chain scenario. Let's say a grid-down situation in a western suburb. You need antibiotics for your child's ear infection. Your neighbor has a stash of amoxicillin. If you offer him a 1-ounce gold coin, worth $2,400 in the old world, how does he make change? Does he saw off a microscopic sliver of the coin? He can't. The transaction fails because the denomination is too high. But if you offer him 10 gallons of treated water, a warm wool blanket, and a bottle of bourbon, that is a trade he can conceptualize. The utility is immediate. This is what economists call the coincidence of wants. In a high-trust, money-based economy, you don't need a coincidence of wants. You give money, you get goods. In a collapse, You need to have exactly what the other person lacks. Gold fails the utility test in the acute phase of a crisis. You cannot eat it. It does not generate heat. It does not kill bacteria. It does not filter water. The person who controls the biological necessities, calories, hydration, heat, hygiene, becomes the central banker of their neighborhood. Point 3. The Cuban lesson. The Agrarian Firewall. The Great Depression in the U.S. taught us about farming, but the Cuban special period of the 1990s is the definitive case study for modern survival. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, Cuba lost 80% of its imports overnight. No oil, no chemical fertilizers, no pesticides, no spare parts for tractors. The average Cuban lost 20 pounds of body weight in 2 years. They called it the special period. It was a slow-motion famine. But look at who survived without starving. It wasn't the party officials with hordes of pesos. It wasn't the people with jewelry. It was the organopónicos. This was a decentralized revolution of urban agriculture. People turned parking lots, rooftops, and balconies into high-yield organic farms. They didn't do this to be green or hipster. They did it to not die. Havana, a dense concrete city, began producing 50% of its own vegetable consumption inside the city limits. Here is the forensic takeaway. Productive land is the only asset that prints its own dividends. During the U.S. Great Depression, 1929 to 1939, we saw the same mathematical reality. In the industrial cities like Detroit and Chicago, unemployment hit 50%. Men were waiting in bread lines for hours. But in rural Iowa and the casual homesteads of Appalachia, the data shows a different story. Was life hard? Yes. Did they have cash? No. But were they starving? No. A family with a half-acre garden, a root cellar, and a flock of chickens had an agrarian firewall against the financial collapse. They produced their own inputs. The academic data on this is staggering. During the 2008 financial crisis, while the S&P 500 evaporated 46% of its value, global farmland indices actually increased. Why? Because people have to eat 3 times a day, regardless of what the Dow Jones Industrial Average does. If you are sitting in a condo with a brokerage account full of ETFs and a safe full of silver, but you cannot grow a tomato, you are ecologically vulnerable. You are a consumer in a world that can no longer guarantee supply. The ultimate hedge is not a shiny metal rock. It is a perennial food forest and the knowledge of how to compost. Point 4. The skill premium, the fixer economy. Let's talk about human capital. In a depression scenario, the service economy, marketing consultants, HR managers, day traders, evaporates. These are luxury professions supported by surplus wealth. When the surplus vanishes, the economy pivots to maintenance and repair. Return to the Cuban example. With no new cars and no spare parts, the mechanic who could keep a 1957 Chevy running using parts from a washing machine and a tractor became the most important man in the neighborhood. This is the fixer class. In Sarajevo, 1992 to 1996, during the longest siege in modern warfare, the skills that commanded the highest trade value were specific: paramedics/nurses, the ability to suture a wound or treat an infection without a hospital; electricians/mechanics, the ability to rig a car battery to power a radio or fix a broken water pump; Shoemakers/tailors. When you can't buy new clothes for 4 years, the person who can resole boots is essential. I want to highlight a specific historical anomaly from the U.S. Great Depression. While stockbrokers were jumping out of windows, country doctors were eating well. They weren't getting paid in dollars, they were getting paid in chickens, cords of wood, and sides of beef. The skill of healing is inflation-proof. Contrast this with gold. Gold is a static asset. It sits in a hole. It does nothing. A skill is a kinetic asset. It can be deployed 1,000 times. You can trade your ability to fix a roof for food today, and then do it again tomorrow for firewood. You cannot spend the same gold coin twice. If you are 45 years old, and your only skill is manipulating spreadsheets, you are in the danger zone. You need to acquire tangible competencies. Learn to weld. Learn to splice wire. Learn to butcher. Learn to identify local medicinal flora. These skills weigh nothing in your backpack, but they weigh everything in the marketplace of survival. Point 5. The ultimate trade goods. The hard currency. So if gold is bad for day-to-day trade, what should you actually stack? We need to look at the Selko list. Selko Begovic, who survived the Bosnia crisis, famously stated that the items most people hoard are wrong. Based on cross-referencing data from Bosnia, Lebanon, and Venezuela, here is the holy trinity of barter goods. Hygiene and sanitation. In a grid-down scenario, dysentery kills more people than bullets. Bleach. A single gallon of plain bleach can purify thousands of gallons of drinking water. It is liquid life. Soap/feminine hygiene. In Sarajevo, a bar of soap traded for a liter of cooking oil. Dignity is a commodity. Toilet paper/baby wipes. Look at what disappeared first during the COVID-19 panic. Now imagine that supply never comes back. Over-the-counter pharmacology. In a collapsed world, a toothache can be debilitating. A minor cut can turn septic and kill you. Antibiotics. Fish mox/amoxicillin. This is the gold standard. In a world without doctors, a course of antibiotics is worth more than a diamond ring. Painkillers. Ibuprofen/acetaminophen. People will trade anything to stop pain. Alcohol. Miniatures. The airline bottles of vodka or whiskey. They are single-serving, high-value, and serve dual purposes: sterilization and numbing reality. Energy and light. Disposable lighters. Bic. Selko famously noted that a man with 500 Bic lighters was a rich man. A lighter gives you fire instantly. Fire means cooked food, safety, and boiled water, sterility. It is portable and non-perishable. AA/AAA. Batteries. In a blackout, these power the flashlights and radios. They become small, tradable units of currency. The generator trap. Many people buy a $3,000 loud, gas-guzzling generator. Selko warns against this. A generator screams, "I have resources," to everyone within a mile radius. It requires fuel that you won't be able to find. It is better to have 100 solar garden lights that you can bring inside at night, or a small, silent solar array, than one massive machine that paints a target on your back. Point 6. The modern autopsy. Turkey and Argentina now. You might think, well, I'll just buy gold now and wait it out. Let's look at Turkey right now. Inflation is officially 60 to 70%, unofficially much higher. The lira is vaporizing. Yes, Turks are buying gold, but the government is also imposing quotas, spreads are widening, and carrying large amounts of gold makes you a target for theft in a desperate society. More importantly, look at the rise of shadow dollarization. In Argentina, blue-chip, crisp 100 US dollar bills are the real currency. But even better, Starlink terminals. In war zones like Ukraine, a Starlink terminal, access to information, is an asset of immense strategic value. In Venezuela, the mining rig for cryptocurrency became a survival tool. Not because crypto is stable, but because it allowed people to bypass the banking controls. However, that only worked as long as the internet and power grid held. When the grid fails, we go back to the 1800s. A woman in Venezuela named Keila Oval became famous in survival circles. She wasn't a prepper. She was just a woman who planted a backyard garden of passion fruit and tomatoes. She told reporters, "Money doesn't buy anything. I am better off here swapping things to survive." She traded tomatoes for rice. She traded passion fruit for medicine. She effectively exited the collapsed national economy and entered a microeconomy of tangible assets. She created her own central bank, where the reserves were calories, not paper. Point 7. The social insurance policy. Here is the factor that no spreadsheet can calculate: the tribe. A meta-analysis of 148 mortality studies, over 300,000 participants, found that strong social connections increase your odds of survival by 50%. This impact is comparable to quitting smoking. In the survival context, the lone wolf dies. The movie myth of the guy in the bunker with 10,000 rounds of ammo fighting off the world is a fantasy. In reality, he falls asleep, and someone takes his stuff. The Mormon prepping model is the gold standard here. The LDS Church encourages bishops' storehouses, community pantries. If a family falls on hard times, the community feeds them. In a total collapse, this network becomes a fortress. In the Argentine collapse, 2001, neighbors formed neighborhood watch groups. They set up barricades. They shared food. If you were known as the selfish guy who hoarded everything and didn't talk to anyone, you were the first one looted. Selko emphasized that his trading network relied on pre-war trust. You traded with people you knew before the shooting started. If you are not building relationships with your neighbors now, if you don't know the name of the guy living 3 doors down, you have a massive hole in your security architecture. Social capital is the grease that makes the barter economy work. Without trust, every transaction is a potential robbery. Point 8. The asset class showdown. Let's look at the financial performance of real assets versus financial assets during stagflation and crisis. We analyzed the 1970s stagflation in the US. High inflation, low growth. Stocks, S&P 500. In real terms, dead money for a decade. Bonds, decimated by inflation. Farmland and timberland, soared. Commodities, soared. Why? Because when money breaks, people prioritize needs. Timberland is an interesting case. Trees grow regardless of what the Federal Reserve Chairman says. It is biological compounding. Farmland produces yield, crops, regardless of interest rates. Compare this to gold. Gold did perform well in the 1970s. I'm not saying gold is worthless, but gold is wealth insurance, not survival insurance. Survival insurance keeps you alive for the first 12 to 24 months of chaos: food, water, ammo, antibiotics. Wealth insurance preserves your purchasing power for the rebuilding phase after the chaos stabilizes. If you reverse the order, if you buy the gold before the water filter, you are dead. You will be the rich man in the graveyard. The volatility of farmland is remarkably low compared to the S&P 500. It is a slow, boring, life-sustaining asset. In a hyper-volatile world, boring is exactly what you want. The strategic decoupling. Conclusion. So we have the diagnosis. The autopsy of dead empires tells us that money dies, supply chains break, and hunger is the default state of man. What is the prescription? What is the Amish Hedge for the modern era? It is a 5-tier strategy to decouple your survival from the financial system. Tier 1. The caloric foundation. If you have a yard, plant it. If you have a balcony, fill it with pots. Focus on high-calorie crops: potatoes, beans, squash. Learn to preserve what you grow. A pantry with 6 months of food is better than a bank account with $50,000. Tier 2. The tangible skill set. Stop learning how to code. Start learning how to repair. Carpentry, plumbing, basic electrical, first aid, sewing. Become the person your neighbors need to keep around. Tier 3. The barter stockpile. Accumulate the hard currency of the future: 500 Bic lighters, 100 bottles of miniatures, alcohol, water purification tabs, batteries, generic antibiotics. These are cheap now. They will be priceless later. Tier 4. The network. Join a community garden. Go to church. Join a gun club. Volunteer at the fire department. Build the social fabric that will catch you when the government net tears. Tier 5. The speculative store. Gold/silver. Only after you have secured the first 4, buy gold and silver. Hide it. Forget about it. This is for your grandchildren, or for when a new currency is established 5 years post-collapse. The final verdict. The data from Lebanon, Bosnia, Venezuela, and the Great Depression converges on a single truth. When the system crashes, productive capacity beats stored wealth. The question isn't whether the dollar will fail. The math says it eventually must. The question is, when the ATM stops working, will you be the desperate banker trading a Rolex for baby formula? Or will you be the one with the formula, the garden, and the skills to dictate the terms of the trade? Pattern recognition is survival. If this forensic breakdown gave you a new lens on reality, hit that subscribe button. I'm going to be digging into the specific mechanics of the black market economy in the next dossier. Drop a tractor emoji in the comments if you are building your Agrarian Firewall. Tell me, what is the one skill you are learning right now? I read every single comment. Stay sharp. Diversify into reality.